Hello, 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 and welcome back to the Spontaneous Brilliance Podcast. You know, I've been asking for a long time for people to come on and join me in a conversation and send in any questions or any comments or things that they wanted me to talk about. And I've been responding to a lot of those comments and questions all by my widow self here. But today we're going to we've got somebody joining me today to have a conversation. We're going to talk with my dear friend and oftentimes muse, the brilliant actress Katie Preston. And Katie is here remotely, and she and I haven't seen each other in a while because she's in a galaxy far, far away, but we're gonna chat here about whatever Katie wants to chat about. Hi, Katie.
Hi, that just left it wide open.
Which is kind of what it's all about. I keep saying to people, if you've got something you want to talk about in spontaneous brilliance land, come and talk to me about it. So you are, and here we go. So what would you like to talk about, my dear?
One of the things that I think keeps cycling around in my life, and that I see it when I talk to other friends and people all the time, is just, the spontaneous brilliance concept of yes-anding or accepting and just loving fully everybody exactly as they are. Balancing that with also protecting yourself and having boundaries and knowing when to say no and when somebody just is not serving you in their life. I feel like, or in your life, it can get really confusing trying to be like, oh yes, I'm all love and yes-anding and acceptance, but also how do I protect myself? And I think it's funny because sometimes I feel like I'm nailing it, and then other times I feel like, what happened? And then I listen to other people as I'm talking, and it feels like they're constantly struggling too with feeling like balancing that is difficult and confusing. And I think it's fascinating.
And yes, it is. And it sounded like you were bringing up one topic, but it's like 3 or 4 topics kind of smushed together. I think the concept of yes and the concept of accepting is one that can really confuse people. Because accepting, regardless of what it is you're accepting, whether you're accepting somebody else's behavior or their offer or a circumstance or whatever, the idea of accepting it feels like you have to acquiesce to it. Like you have to go, oh, I love you, and if I'm going to be a good person, I'm going to take on whatever this is. And so that's why several years ago, I started using the word acknowledging to kind of substitute for Keith Johnstone's word of accepting. But it's ingrained in my very being that it's offering, accepting, and blocking. So I will always use those words. But if we look at the word acknowledging, it's just allowing it to be a fact in front of you. But then remember that you have 100% response-ability. You have the ability to offer back however you choose. And so it's not about laying down and letting it mow over you, whatever that offer is. But it's about recognizing what this offer is for you. What does it mean for you? And how can it help you? And that doesn't always mean that the offer itself was intended by the offerer to be like helpful or loving or generous or whatever.
Right.
It might have been just as crappy as could be. And yet, if you let it be an addition into your growth process, right? An addition into the journey that you're on that you can then respond to. That's how you can find the and part of yes and, because yes is just the acknowledgement, and is what's really important. What are you offering? Sometimes what you're describing with the I love you unconditionally no matter however you show up, I don't ascribe to that. So I do want to address that because I think that might be something that I've put out there as potentially a misunderstanding. But when we are doing that, I talked recently in a podcast episode about over-accepting, and over-accepting is what we are doing when we are just trying to force ourselves to go, but if I love him, I'm gonna, and if, well, I'm here, so I guess I have to put up with whatever. That's over accepting. And so is going, sitting on the couch and watching something on the news and just sitting around and talking about how much you hate what other people are doing. That's over accepting, right? There's no offer back. There's no and in that. There's just a, yep, I see that. And yeah, it sucks.
Right. And I think you have been kind of clear about that with, being able to not just overly accept someone as loving, but to me, part of what I think can get confusing to people is I feel like we feel like love and acceptance is just accepting everything. And it's interesting for me to start playing with truly loving somebody and kind of taking what they offer and accepting it. The offer doesn't sit well with you. And, I feel like some of the spiritual teachings that we can get into convince us that we need to just accept it and love it and offer it back with just peace and pure acceptance of what it is. But it's funny to play with. Sometimes I think the better acceptance of that is being like, oh my God, this hurt me, and actually letting yourself feel the hurt and anger. Like, to me, that's been more of an actual acceptance of the thing, because then I can move forward and offer from the place of what it truly gave me and not transmuting that anger or pain into just this loving, floating fake butterfly. And then I feel like I can get a boundary with somebody else. And to me, it almost reflects love more to have some sort of boundary or say no, because you're treating that person with respect and honoring what they actually are, and not acquiescing to what we've been taught love is. I don't know if any of that made sense.
Absolutely. Because if you are saying, oh, I'm just going to take it on and I'm not going to feel the anger, and then you're blocking. You're not, because that any emotion that you are experiencing, any process that you're experiencing internally is you offering to you. And I have been working with the concept lately that whenever we are in that frustrated or angry or just even a hopeless or depressed place, that's the moment when our higher self, when our soulful self is out of sync with the character, is out of sync with our egoic self. When they're in sync, then we're fine. But when that relationship is out of integrity, because we're trying in this egoic body to make ourselves do or think or feel something that isn't true, then we're out of alignment with what the soulful self knows. I mean, it came here to experience the full spectrum of human experience, or we wouldn't be humans. That's how do we know? Because we're here, right? So if we are feeling anger, if we are feeling resentment, if we are feeling any of those things, it's not that those feelings are bad. It's what is that feeling telling me? What is the offer I'm making to myself? And where do I have to adjust for this? And it's not about adjusting so that you're in alignment with the other player. It's about adjusting so that you are in alignment with yourself. And
I resonate with that so much because it's funny. You'll hear yourself talking to people, and the same instance can happen 2 days in a row. And one time you feel great and handle it amazingly because you're in total alignment with who you are. And then in the other one, you walk away feeling like crap and just really depressed. And, in that it's usually when I'm trying to get something out of the situation, because then I will drop into this weird manipulation of dishonoring exactly what I want because I'm trying to control the outcome. But, the same scenario can happen. And when I'm in total alignment and know who I am and what I want and not trying to get anything from the other person, I handle it in a way I feel really good.
Yeah, because when you go into the rehearsal of a scene, that the scene has an end. You know that you're going to get there, but you don't start the scene thinking about the end. If you do, then the whole rest of the scene is a mess. It's a wash. If your mind is not on the moment and you're not responding in the moment, then you're just going to get to the end of the map that's on paper already. You're not going to get to anything exciting or wonderful or new. And likewise, when you enter an exchange with another human being, if your mind is on where that has to land, then you're not present to actually catch the offers that are truly coming. I can't tell you how many times I'm in circumstances where I think I know with every fiber of my being how I want this to go, right? and I enter into it with I'm walking up to it with the here's what I think I'm going to say when da 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 da. But then I remind myself of the Emmett Fox prayer that is, let all parties involved come to this out of love. And that includes me. It's not just me praying for, will everybody else please be in alignment with what I want? And that means that we all came to this out of love.
No, and I love that you said that, because I feel like so much of what's going on, like even in social media or news right now, is everybody telling everybody else they need to be more loving. And I'm like, it actually, we all need to like flip that on ourselves too and be like, it applies to us also.
But then what is loving? You know, what does loving look like? I think compassion for me is a huge way for us to really offer in love. But that to me, compassion to me is love mixed with understanding, right? And so, so for me, when we're in those circumstances, what's missing is we can't understand somebody that we're not listening to. So if we're not actually walking into that conversation going, tell me more, tell me what you're thinking, help me understand more. And that is the way that I have kind of taught myself, I guess, to enter difficult conversations, is to start from the perspective of, I'm just going to listen. I'm going to listen until I can't listen anymore because I'm not learning anything new. And when I'm confused, I'm going to ask to have them help me understand. It doesn't mean that I'm over accepting. It doesn't mean I'm saying that I agree with it, but I do want to understand it. And I think that's the place where we skip that step all the time.
Yeah. And I think you're right. Like, I think a lot of people, maybe just, I don't know, me in the history, I guess I can't speak for everyone, but can confuse understanding with agreeing. And I think that there is a lot of power in being able to not agree with somebody and still love them, whatever that is. But that also kind of wraps me back around to my original question, is I feel like that opens, up the territory of how to, is it okay to like go a little political with this, but like
go
how
ahead.
Okay. And I feel like I'm practicing this, but we're just surrounded with people right now who can't tolerate anyone who does not agree with them. And I'm like, I feel like there is room to understand that and have tolerance for it. But where, like within the spontaneous brilliance land, how do you see, someone who really believes that these people disagreeing with them being in their lives is an assault, and they just, want to cut people out of their lives? Like, how do you feel about that kind of thing? Like, versus agreeing to disagree and having love there, or just being like, no, you offend me out.
You offend me. Eject. Thou hast offended. Here is my eject button.
I feel like a lot of people have that.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. And I think that there's a difference between boundaries and blocking,
Okay.
And there's also a futility to fighting with someone else who is a habitual blocker. If you've got somebody in your world who their protective personality is on overdrive and is blocking the crap out of anything that does not feel to them to be in their comfort zone, is not something that they agree with, then it's not your job to make them change. That's their journey. And so your choice becomes to hear them, see them, honor them, understand them as another player on the stage. But that doesn't mean that that you have to either acquiesce to things that they are doing or saying that are in your mind wrong, inappropriate, hurtful, harmful. You can say no to something without blocking it. You can say, you're not saying, oh, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. You're saying, I hear what you're saying, and I have a completely different point of view. Would you like to hear it? If they block and they say no, then there is absolutely nothing you can do about that. That little improv is going to come to an end. It's just you throwing spaghetti against a hard wall. There's nothing is sticking, right? But you notice that I said I have a completely completely different point of view. Would you like to hear it? I didn't say I completely disagree with you, because that is a verbiage that's going to cut them off, because then they feel like they have been insulted or that you're lowering the status of what they think. And I think we are all acting like we're in a zero-sum game right now. You know, if somebody is being heard, that means somebody else is not being heard. If somebody is right, that means somebody else is wrong. And if somebody is good, that means somebody else is bad. And there are moments in time where I am a little stumped and have to do a lot of deep digging and work, because I don't believe in evil. I don't believe in bad things coming to get us. You know, I don't believe in the devil, right?
I don't either.
So I'm always coming at it from, this is somebody's choice, right? That is deliberately intended to block my choice. Okay. How do I respond? So for me, it's always about like that parrying of going, okay, this is the offer that I'm getting, you know? It seems like a big, hairy, ugly offer, but this is what I'm getting. So I chose to be on this planet at this time. My higher self that is much calmer than this egoic personality in that circumstance, but I chose to be here at this space and time. I chose to be with these things going on this planet at this time. So what is it that I intend to show up as, the higher part of me? What is it that I intend to be doing? And I think it's a time planetarily, globally, the great stage of life. It is a time when we are interconnected with literally the entire globe, and we are noticing what's happening on the other side of the planet in real time. And I think that part of that is that we are here at this time with these resources because every single one of us has a purpose. We have a piece of the puzzle. And when we are not offering it outside the confines of our little room or the streets that we're used to, when we aren't offering it beyond that, then we're letting down the character that we came here to play. We're not playing the character full out. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. So I feel like you're saying that it's important to use like the resources that we have to communicate fully. I'm kind of muting myself because I'm scared to do that a lot, because I feel like I have ideas that don't align with a lot of my friends the way that they probably think they should align with, and it intimidates me. But what I'm hearing is that that's blocking.
It is. It is. Anytime you tell yourself to shut up when about your ideas, right? And like, you know, I mean, there are times when it's good to say, you know what, don't say that, because there's no, you know, it's not what I really...
There are definitely times I should just shut up.
Yeah, right. There are times when it's not going to do anything but just maybe make your egoic self feel a little better for a minute, you know, if you slap that person down. One of the ways that I think we can check ourselves is by noticing what we're doing to the other person's status. If we are not about just going, they're bad, ooh, ick, and we're about saying, does this notion really make sense? To me, it does not, and here's why. And if you can show me an alternative point of view that comes from you, please do. But in inviting people to speak from their heart, not from the playbook that they've heard on the news or something, just inviting people to speak from what is happening within them. I think almost always it ends up being a conversation about fear. You know, at the bottom of it, they're afraid that they're not in control of what's happening. They want somebody to be in control. And I think we go looking for that person that's in control, even if it's quote bad control, right? If we can see the specter, we can see the person that's in control, or the people, or the cabal, right? Then we can at least explain why we're not responsible for this, why we don't have any ownership in this.
And it's easier to just bash it and talk down to it than try to understand it or look at it as just another point of view, I think sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, it is just another thought. And all thoughts are equally powerful. And that's part of that whole thing with what I natter on about here all the time is that, every human being is as valuable, powerful, essential as every other human being. All human beings, regardless of their education or their position in the world or their, in the sort of societal status or their perceived abilities. Everybody has a unique creative genius. Everybody came here to do something. And a lot of times we are denying that even in ourselves. If we're one of those people that's denying showing up fully as who we are, we're usually doing that to ourselves as much as anyone else is doing it to us.
I 100% agree with that. You're kind of like aligning me to this other question. I'm curious, like your thoughts on, especially again, politically, just because it's the biggest thing right now, I feel like, what is a way that you can see as like the most helpful for, people to show up? You talk about like, kind of just accepting these different viewpoints and different things. And I 100% don't think that like just bashing everyone or just like protesting in anger on either side really helps. But I'm not sure like what the best way to affect change is. Like I don't want to be somebody who just sits back and does nothing. But I feel like a lot of the tactics that I see that people are combating it or standing up against it are fueling the hate a little bit and the anger and the separation. And I'm just like, what do you see as something that like we can really do to help with that? I don't know if that's a scope or like within the scope of this.
Sure. I mean, anything's in the scope of this. I think that's a big question. And I did just want to track back to one of the things that you said in there that you mentioned accepting other people's points of view. I want to make sure that we're looking at it from the standpoint of acknowledging their point of view, understanding their point of view. That would be the goal, to give their point of view the airspace for you to understand it and see it. And then you know how you truly want to respond as opposed to a knee-jerk response. And also you mentioned protesting. I actually think that protesting is an offer. Protesting is an offer.
Okay.
So whoever they're not blocking, they're stating their opinion. And a lot of people can't find community, a feeling of safety, a feeling of camaraderie, or a feeling of being heard unless they're amidst a crowd of people that are all shouting the same thing at the same time. That's cool. The second that you are saying, I get to do this and you don't, that's when that's where the blocking is. I get to stand on the State House steps and say what I think is wrong, but your group, not so much. Right?
Okay.
So I that's blocking. But I'm going to stand on the State House steps on Wednesday and talk about this, and then you're going to stand on the State House steps on Thursday and talk about it. And it will have the effect that it has based on all the choices that all the other players make that hear that or participate or whatever. It's just the moment that you are saying you cannot have the opportunity to make your offer, or that someone else is telling me I can't exist in that space. That's blocking. Did that clarify anything?
It sort of did. I actually really appreciate your viewpoint on that. It did a little bit. I'm still, I don't know if I'm going to derail from what we're talking about here if I go where my head's going.
It just goes wherever it goes, honey. Just go for it.
Fascinating.
Any part of the question I left out, just please reiterate it for me.
Well, where I get hung up on protesting, because I'm not against it. Like, I think it's awesome, but it's not something that I do sometimes, and I feel bad because I feel like I'm judged a little bit for not getting out there and doing that. But I feel like you're protesting to people who already agree with you. And a lot of times the signs I see at protests are so antagonistic toward the other person or like the other side that I still feel like that's negative energy that I don't think is helping the ultimate message or I guess it's helping their message. But, to me, just the idea of trying to understand and find compassion. I feel like a lot of what I see about protests just fuels the separation and the need for the other side to want to fight back or like rally against it. But I love the idea, and I appreciate your viewpoint of the community thing.
If it's just a big, giant blocking festival where you're just all spewing a bunch of junk about somebody else, then that's not helpful. But like, the times that I have, quote, protested myself, I participated in a lot of add the words things and when
I remember you recording the song at our house.
When we were looking to legalize gay marriage and things like that, I was there, and I have to say those were parties, big, giant pride flags, humongous pride flags that everybody was figuring out how to get to billow up and billow down, and such cross sections of people, marching together, and it was something that I took my children to. There are some protests, some circumstances where if I wouldn't take my 10-year-old, then I shouldn't be there either, is my point of view on it, because I'm not comfortable with being sure that that's a reasonable environment. Offering it and accepting doesn't make you give up judgment or discernment. You're writing the play that you're in. You're writing this story. You're writing your reality. So choose to participate in what you want your story to play out like. You're not just the player, you're the playwright. And so it's owning that and knowing that, this is not a part of my story, but a really beautiful circumstance where people come together and they're discussing stuff. That is. So I'm going to make that a part of my story. I mean, I would say maybe your version of protesting, Katie, is to start your own podcast and get people to chat with you about it. Just mentioning. Just
not a bad idea. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, and it did make me think, because I think the only protest I've ever actually been to was kind of a dangerous feeling circumstance, and there was just a lot of anger and people driving around with guns on the other side. It was just like, to me, I was just like, what is this? How is this helping anything?
Right.
But that is just my experience with the one.
Yeah. And I wouldn't have been there. For me, that's not, because I kind of go with Mother Teresa on that. I won't fight against anything, but I will work for. I'm happy to invest in forward motion.
Yeah.
But I will not engage in a battle of mutual hysterical blocking.
And I love that. I feel like that's exactly what I'm feeling, and somebody else has already clearly said it. Thank you, Mother Teresa.
Thank you, Mother Teresa.
But no, I think that's the root of what I was feeling with it. But yeah, I appreciate that.
So did we cover that whole question? I wasn't sure whether we did get to it or not.
The way my brain works, I'm not totally sure either. But I feel happy with where we went on it.
Yay! Well, what would be your final question for today?
I guess the final one would be like, because I found myself in this situation, and I keep talking to another friend right now who's in a situation like this, where I'll use work as an example. If you're like at a job that you don't like, and then you get another job and the same thing happens, and you get another job and the same thing happens, like that space of finding let me look at myself and figure out what I need to change versus this situation just isn't working for me, and keep moving. It's funny to me navigating like what we do to invite these situations that reoccur, and just, I don't know, like when to change the situation versus when to really look at and change yourself.
The first thing that springs to my mind is my favorite question for myself, which is, what am I trying to teach me? It's not, what am I doing wrong? It's not, how am I ending up in this over and over again? How come I'm doing this? What is this repeating pattern? As soon as we start to say why, then we know that we're just looking for some justification or explanation that lets our egoic self feel better. But when we own it completely and say, what is it I'm trying to teach me? Maybe the reason that I get back into these circumstances over and over again is because there is something there where I haven't stood up for myself, and I feel myself do the same thing over and over again. And maybe I just need to stand up and be authentic. Or maybe it's that I keep repeating this because I think it's more valuable to feel like somebody is showing me affection than to have it be a particular somebody. Or maybe I'm getting back into this circumstance because I'm not listening to people when they're telling me who they are. ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
Or I think that I need this job, and any job that pays me any amount of money will hold back fear enough that it's worth it to me to give up whatever else I'm giving up, rather than looking at, okay, what could I be trying to teach me here, just
Mm-hmm.
in terms of like taking a job for money thing, if it's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, yes, I do need money, and I do need to look at my conscious and loving relationship with money. Does it even seem like a joke to say I have a conscious and loving relationship with money? Because many of us don't, right? So looking at that, looking at what is it that I would be getting from this job that would be better than where I am? What is it in this job that I truly don't like? Is it that I don't like the job? Is it that I don't like my coworkers? Is it that I don't like who I am in this environment? And then what is that? And I think when you asked the question and you said, what is it that we need to change about ourselves? I'm not always sure that it's about changing ourselves so much as it is about acknowledging ourselves, recognizing ourselves and who we really are, and letting that be the person that shows up.
I love that. And first, I want to be real clear that I absolutely adore my job right now. That was not a current thing going on for me. I'm in love with where I work. But I appreciate so much the way you were putting that, because I think it, even just being like, what am I trying to teach myself, or how can I more fully drop into my authentic self, to me is so much more empowering than why do I keep doing this, or what am I doing wrong? And I think that's a loop that you see people get into. And like, I've done it. And I mean, that's what like perpetuates whatever you're doing wrong, right? Like you just start snowballing into this, not taking care of yourself and almost beating yourself up more because you're not taking care of yourself. So I really love the way you worded that, because it was positive and empowering, but also acknowledged, hey, I can do something better here.
Yeah, because we immediately start looking for the why, which means somebody else is doing this to me. Something else is doing this to me. When we start looking at as though the universe is doing something to us, we're in the wrong space. We're in the wrong space inside ourselves, because we're missing the point that whatever is happening, it's happening for us to help create the environment that we wanted to experience. And experiences are not all happy.
They're not. And this is just reminding me too, like how much power we have to like change our attention, and how easy it is to focus on the one thing that's not making us happy versus looking at the things that are. And I don't know why what you were saying made me feel like saying that though, but it can change your energy so much. It was funny earlier when we got on the call, I don't know if this was recorded, but you asked how I was doing. And I was like, 90% awesome. And I immediately wanted to go into the 10% that wasn't awesome and tell you all about it. But I stopped myself, because I'm like, what is I going to do but change my energy into this bad thing? Like, stay with the 90% that's going really well. Focus on that.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's like, that's the time to hit that gratitude button. When your brain is focused on that 10%, or even if it's 2%, our brain can get focused on it. Like we can pick the bad seed out from 100 miles away. And if we can immediately, when we notice that, go straight to gratitude. I did a podcast once where I talked about my mom and her various rules. And one of the things that she taught me very young was count your blessings. When something would seem to be going horribly wrong, she'd say, well, count your blessings. And she didn't mean just a hyperbole. She meant right now, start counting, start telling me what your blessings are. Tell yourself.
Which is so funny, because just, you grow up hearing that so much that it turns into something that I think can make some people's skin crawl when they hear it. But it is so infuriating when you realize how true it is. And you're like, oh, darn it. That's exactly what I need to be doing. And it does help. And I hate everyone who ever told me that, but I love them. And fine, I'll do it.
Fine. I'll be grateful. Okay. One of my daughters sounds like that when I suggest that she be grateful or do the ho'oponopono. It's like, yeah. Well, I think we need to wrap up now, but Katie, this has been an absolute blast. I mean, the time sailed by so fast. We could be in an hours long episode, obviously. So put your thinking cap back on and decide some more things you wanna talk about, and
I'd love to.
Let's talk about it, babe, because I love chatting with you.
Same. Thank you.
All right, sweetie. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm sure that we caused some, food for thought, which is beautiful and brilliant. May I use that word? And Katie, any final thought that you want to share? If you just have this platform to share something lovely with the world right now, what would you like to say?
Oh my gosh. Just to really embrace your own spontaneous brilliance. And I mean, so much of what you said was just like being authentic to yourself and really just letting your voice come through and knowing that's enough and not needing somebody else to tell you it's enough. Like just knowing that aligning with your truth feels good.
It does. It does. All right. So we're going to all go out there into the world and align with our truth. I love that. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Katie. And thank you, everybody, for listening. And as always, have a beautiful, glorious, blessing-filled day. Bye-bye. The Spontaneous Brilliance Podcast is brought to you by Miracle Communications Group. Our producer is Michelle Oneida. Sound engineer is Corey Michaels at Corey Michaels Productions. Music is composed by Rex Miller. And I'm your host, Sandra Kavanaugh. You can learn more about me and all things Spontaneous Brilliance at sandrakavanaugh.com or spontaneousbrilliance.com. And please join the conversation here at the Spontaneous Brilliance Podcast by emailing us at podcast@spontaneousbrilliance.com.